Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I know that you have probably heard that old adage in marketing of the money is in the list. And if you've ever thought to yourself, well, I don't have a list, or I don't know how to grow my list, or I don't know what content to write and send to my list, well, today's guest is absolutely going to blow your mind. I love not only the work that he does, I love his business. I love the fact that he has his own rapidly growing newsletter of his own. So let me introduce you to today's guest. His name is Evan Kozliner. Evan is the co-founder and CEO of a company called Potions. Before starting Potions, Evan helped big brands like Sephora and Fashion Nova automate their email and SMS text message marketing at Attentive Mobile, where he was the first AI hire 5 years ago. If you're thinking to yourself, an AI hire 5 years ago, yeah, Evan's going to bring a lot of stuff to us today about how to actually use AI to build out a content marketing strategy that actually grows your business. Evan has been passionate about AI's power to make people's lives better since he was in college. He went to Ohio State, where he specialized in AI for his undergraduate degree and conducted cancer research for the Bioinformatics department. After school, he worked for Amazon's cloud organization, AWS, for a couple of years. He then left Amazon to join Attentive Mobile, where he got his hands dirty doing AI-powered marketing. When he saw how effective the email and SMS that he was producing for large brands was, he became excited about how many of the same techniques could be applied to help smaller businesses automate their content marketing. And that's exactly what he does, because having recently blitzscaled his own AI-powered newsletter to 50,000 subscribers in just 3 months, he knew a thing or two about newsletter marketing and decided to start there. So if you're thinking, Evan's really good at this stuff, how expensive is this? You're going to be mind blown at his knowledge, how affordable and accessible it is for small business owners. There's going to be so much good stuff. So I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Evan Kozliner. All right, Evan, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
Heck yes, Evan, there's so much good stuff that we're going to get into. The hardest part will be fitting it all in a 30-minute episode, but let's kick things off with you taking us beyond the bio. Who's Evan? How'd you start doing all these cool things?
Yeah, born and raised in Columbus, Ohio. It doesn't sound like much, but actually it's an amazing town to learn some academic stuff. Was really interested in AI. Originally wanted to be a philosophy major. Ended up in computer science because I was fascinated by what neural networks could do. Ended up working in the Bioinformatics department, like you mentioned, at Ohio State, doing a lot. I got my first job as a programmer when I was 18. Always a bit of a nerd. Tried to build a lot of companies in the meantime, but I always struggled because I'd build the product and I'd never do the marketing. So I became really passionate about helping people get their marketing from 0 to 1, because that was always the pain point that I had trying to build my own businesses.
Yeah. I love that overview, Evan. Do you want to talk to us about Potions? Because I love how much we're going to talk about your business directly today. It just seems to me like it's a huge opportunity. And most importantly, it's accessible to literally every wantrepreneur and entrepreneur.
Yeah, 100%. I think something that like a lot of business owners and like people who are like aspiring to build businesses like often don't understand is how important it is to grow an email list. Like as an entrepreneur, like you will build so many email lists and you will make so many segments to those email lists. It's not even funny. Like one of the emails I send out like every like 2 or 3 months is like a friends and family update. And like you would be surprised how many people come out of the woodwork and just help you because you're updating them regularly. It's the same thing with investor updates. Like you should be sending an investor update monthly. You'll have product updates. You'll also have like, of course, marketing newsletters and like media related newsletters that can be an amazing side business for a lot of people. So I like to think about newsletters as being like important as this second tier of the internet. Have you ever heard of the 2-tier internet theory, Brian?
No, I'd love for you to expand on that.
Yeah, so the idea is that there are 2 tiers to the internet. The first is like the social media layer, which is like the top of funnel is what we call it in marketing. The top of funnel being like, TikTok or LinkedIn, for example. And then the second layer is where all the private information is. Think about like private group chats or or email newsletters, for example. And that's where like usually a lot of the value is, as opposed to like the, kind of clickbaity stuff on the top of the funnel that like kind of just draws you in. And the reason why all the value is in that second layer is because if you've subscribed to someone's newsletter, they can access your email and like send you offers directly, which is actually worth like about an order of magnitude or 10 times more for them than having you as a social media follower. So basically, like the way to think about it is like an email address that's like reading your email is worth like over 10 times more than a social media follower. So like the objective of building a social media following is actually in many ways to gather the email addresses.
Yeah, Evan, hearing you talk about that, and especially that second layer where you reveal that's where the value is. We all have heard that phrase of the money is in the list. And what I experience, obviously talking to entrepreneurs for a living, is that too many people conflate having something and using a tool with actually extracting the value. And too many people say, well, I have an email list, Evan. I signed up for a MailChimp account. And merely having a tool that is available doesn't mean that you're going to extract value from it. Obviously, there's the audience side, there's the content side, there's the conversion piece that happens behind the scenes. Walk us through, where are the value add pieces of having an email list?
Well, I mean, this is, Brian, exactly why we built Potions, because actually extracting that value is so challenging if you don't know a lot about email. So basically, like a couple of things that you can do, you're building this list ongoing and you're sending them ongoing communications. Consistently writing those comms is hard, first of all. But once you do have that ongoing communication, you can begin to like ask your audience for things, or you can begin to send them offers. A great example of this would be like an email newsletter. The simplest example would be like a media-based newsletter, like something running on any of the larger platforms that like talks about recent events, like a local newsletter, and then like eventually sends like direct offers to that list every once in a while once those folks are opening. So for example, like 20% off your next coffee at this coffee shop or something like that. And that email blast to a list that's been reading is a lot higher conversion rate than making a social media post, for example.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense, especially because we've all seen our organic reaches go down over the past few years, especially since 2020. I think a lot happened behind the scenes with the algorithms, and that's why we constantly hear in marketing, we talk about ecosystems and platforms that we own versus those that we rent or that we borrow, and we are at the mercy of these algorithms changing on us. You obviously have grown a very successful newsletter of your own. Talk to us about that process, because like I said, starting it is one thing, growing it is another. You're obviously going to talk to us a lot about the content here today, but what's the process look like? What's the timeline look like? A lot of people will get excited about your 3-month number, but take us behind the scenes.
Totally. Actually, before I even do that, I want to talk about the algorithm itself and why this is so like such a challenge for folks building on social media, because I actually specialized in recommender algorithms. So I'm like an expert in that as well. And basically, like the way that like a TikTok or a LinkedIn works is it's always going to prioritize like the content that it thinks is going to like maximize like time on its platform. It doesn't really care about like you as a business owner, quite ultimately. Like sometimes temporarily, like platforms like Instagram right now will prioritize reach, which means letting new people see new content over engagement. And that's just to get creators onto the platform. And then they'll like switch up the script and just show the best possible content to the most people. And so you can never really trust these algorithms like long term, because like you don't own the audience, like you mentioned. And that's like baked into the way the software is built, right? So that's one thing. So I really want to just like emphasize that point. Like you need to be building an email list. If you're not, you're not robust against these algorithm changes. And the second is with respect to growing the list. So it's really hard to get people off of a platform like TikTok. The list tends to be a little bit more valuable in B2B, although it is very valuable in B2C as well. That's business to business companies and versus B2C companies. there's all kinds of ways to grow an email list. There's like a bajillion. And like the best ways to do it will really depend on your product and your business. So I wouldn't recommend going and buying like cold email list online and like just mass DMing them. But what worked for us with the product I built, which was this really, really special newsletter called Amply Briefs. It was a really unique product. It was kind of like a mid-journey of newsletters. So you type in a little bit about yourself and what you were interested in, and we would go build a newsletter using other content specifically for you. So if you were like, hey, I'm Brian, I'm fascinated by like the 0 to 1 entrepreneurship journey, and I run a podcast, we would go build a newsletter around that exact thing written specifically for you as an industry expert. Whereas if you were like, oh, I'm like a new entrepreneur, we would go build a newsletter specifically about like being a new entrepreneur, specifically for you, in whatever industry you were in. And so like, obviously this is like a pretty attractive value proposition, but the way we grew that newsletter, which, I don't know how replicable this is, but basically we did mass cold DMs, basically telling people, hey, we built a newsletter specifically for you. So we'd go and scrape a list from somewhere and we'd mass DM those people and just be like, oh, hey, like I have a newsletter written specifically for you, Brian, type yes to get on the list. And then like 10% of the time or something crazy like that, people would say yes and they'd be on the email list. And we just grew it like crazy with that.
Yeah, I love that overview. It's really cool. And it reveals so many aspects to your approach to building an audience, serving an audience, nurturing an audience, because it's right there. I mean, the lead of that story is that personalization. It is an email newsletter for me. You understand my interests, my fears, my goals, my doubts, every single aspect of me. And you serve those things, which it makes it seem silly to ask you this question. But I know that the audience will be thinking, Brian, ask Evan this question on the air. And that is, what is the content? What should we be sending in our newsletters? It's so clear to me how ideal customer profile focused that you are. But for all of those people thinking, do I send them stories? Do I send them case studies? Do I send them recent news? Like, what is it that we actually send to them? Talk about that actual content.
Yeah, definitely. I think the unifying theme in almost all email newsletters, whether it's B2C or B2B businesses, is that like you should try to solve a problem for your audience, and try to keep the most valuable content in the newsletter. So if you're just purely like recycling content, it's not always the best. You want to be sure that there's like some really high value stuff in the newsletter. So for example, just thinking about like some of the newsletters we build with Potions, we do these kind of content style interviews with folks to build the newsletter. So they'll talk about their industry or stuff that only really they know, and then we'll use that to build out the email newsletter. So it should feel like exclusive. It should feel very high value. Other problems you can solve, like, one big newsletter I follow is all about like AI funding rounds, right? So like that's like kind of hard research to do and like curate in a way that's like very useful for entrepreneurs in the AI space. There's some equivalent in like whatever industry or like whatever market that you're solving a problem for, whether that's like, maybe like local deals or, local events in some markets, or there's just always a problem that's like relatively exclusive that you can solve, that's like high value and wouldn't necessarily be on a social media. Oftentimes it involves like a curated asset, like I said, like a list of investors, or I don't know, like industry research that's like original from you. We're putting together some on our end, or like maybe even like an offer, like a free call with you or something like that can be another thing. We have a concept in marketing called a lead magnet. And that's just like something you give away for free in order to collect an email address. But yeah, your email newsletter needs to have this like pretty high value content in order to continue being read. And with Potions, we help you build that content.
Yeah, Evan, the word that keeps popping up in all of your answers is, of course, value. And hearing you rattle off some of those valuable ingredients of an email newsletter makes me think about my own inbox and the newsletters that I most look forward to receiving. And you're right, a lot of them, I can only imagine the amount of work that those people are putting into it because, for example, I live in Tampa, Florida. I love knowing what's going on around Tampa. I get email newsletters weekly about Tampa events and even just local politics, what's happening, what roads are being worked on, what changes are coming, what new restaurants are coming, and then AI. I'm all in on AI newsletters. I don't know how anyone keeps on top of all the different developments within the world of AI. So someone else is doing that work for me, and I, as a subscriber, I'm very much appreciating that value in my inbox, which leads me to this next topic of conversation, Evan, which is a lot of listeners are probably thinking, I'm not going to be a full-time researcher or curator. I have a business to run. How the heck am I going to manage my newsletter on top of that and keep providing that value? Of course, it's a softball question for you. In walks Potions. Talk to us about what that actually looks like, because you work specifically with business owners who are busy running their businesses. How does Potions fit into that existing business mix?
Yeah, that's really what you hinted on is like, that's the magic of Potions, right? We help you build this like amazing email newsletter with just like 15 minutes of your time every week. And so a couple ways we do that. One is through this like content interview process where you'll talk with us or our system, and we'll ask you questions that are intended to get interesting and like useful insights out of your brain and onto paper. And then we'll also curate sources that you give us online. And using those ingredients, essentially, and those raw materials will help you build out your content on email and actually now on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah, and part of it, Evan, I feel like we're halfway through this episode, so I've got to drop the spoiler. I'm going to let you do it. Talk about accessibility, because a lot of people tune into podcasts, they get all these ideas, and they say, yeah, I would love to have a newsletter in my business. I would love to have Potions backing it. But a lot of people, when they listen to podcasts, it's not the most transparent place in the world when business owners come on and talk about their businesses, and they don't talk about costs and pricing. What does the affordability look like on the back end?
I mean, that's really the amazing thing about what we're building. It's going to cost just $120 a month for you, or $100 for annual pricing. And that's really like only possible because of all the tech we've built on our end. It's really an awesome system.
Yeah, awesome. Talk to us about that tech, because a lot of people, when they hear tech and they hear $100 a month, they're probably going to jump straight to, oh, well, then Evan just has some sort of AI that's going to be writing these things. And obviously, it's a heavy part of your background and your expertise is, of course, you are aided by AI. That's part of the big value add and why you can make it so accessible for people. What does that look like on the back end? Is it purely just a ChatGPT clone writing generic content that everybody else has? Or what does it actually look like after Potions uses all those ingredients?
Yeah, so we take your ingredients and of course we run them through AI, but then we also have a secondary system that checks the quality that we've hand built and then flags it with human experts that adjust things on our end. So that way, it's this kind of like human AI mixture that really produces like the highest quality possible content. I think it's like, it's really best in class stuff. And it's only really possible because, we've taken all this like time and love to like learn this space and then like build out this tech and hire this like incredible team.
Yeah, Evan, I want to go deeper there because obviously a lot of people will get really excited. You and I are here on the air talking about $100 a month. All of this can become accessible for you. The next question that people always have besides money is, of course, time. And you've talked about the 15 minutes a week that it takes to just talk to you and your team and your system about the types of content that we want to put out there. But I know as the host of this show, how many people are just like, well, how long will it take for me to succeed? How long will it take for me to start seeing results? And obviously it's different for everybody. I always hate giving that kind of lawyer answer of it depends and we'll have to see. But Evan, from your experience and all the different clients that you've worked with, what does that timeline look like? A lot of people think you need a 10,000 person newsletter in order to succeed, but I've personally experienced it and I'm sure you've seen it on a way bigger scale than I have. What does that timeline look like to start gaining traction and getting customers and clients?
Yeah, like you mentioned, every business is different, but like with a high value audience, actually like less is more. So I like to make this distinction between like the beefy like media email newsletters and then like the business newsletters that like drive the most value for folks. And so you're probably used to like all of these really big media newsletters like Morning Brew and stuff like that. These folks, like, they make their money by having like hundreds of thousands, if not millions of subscribers, and then selling ads within the newsletter. And that's like certainly a viable path if you want the newsletter to like be your main business. But like, you can make money with a small audience of like just a couple hundred people if the audience is really valuable. I was at one point mentored by basically an exec at TikTok, and they were telling me about like which content creators were making the most money, and you would be surprised how small the audiences are of like some of the most like lucrative content creators. Like 1 million people that aren't that valuable are worth much less than like say 50,000 people that are incredibly valuable. So some of the newsletters that we power like have like 100 or 200 people on them. I'm not getting like numbers that low, but the ROI on those newsletters is incredible because they're tied to products. And those newsletters like cause the products to have higher retention. And they also, or they invite people to events, and those events lead to sales. And those sales can be very lucrative if you're in the enterprise space. And so it really depends. For like B2C products, like smaller products and smaller businesses, it's kind of a retention play. And so I would worry a little bit less about like, I would worry a little bit less about like directly driving revenue from the newsletter itself. Instead, make it like incredibly value add and tie it into your business or your community. So like another really effective strategy is like building a newsletter that's like a roundup of like things that your community has said, but make it really tailored and really well designed with potions. Like, don't just use like the generic tools on like, I don't know, whatever the main community sites are nowadays, like Patreon and stuff like that. Like, use potions to make it beautiful, and then send it out and really make your community feel special. Like, that's what's going to drive like retention with whatever you're building. So it's all very business dependent. And like, another thing about the magic of potions is like, we will figure out like what the right strategy is for you. You don't have to think about email, essentially.
Yeah, I love that, especially because I think about all the people out there who are thinking, well, Evan, my business isn't conducive to a newsletter. Let's just roll with an example of I'm a web design agency and I build and deploy WordPress websites. What's my newsletter going to look like? And it really takes me hearing the way you talk about newsletters and that retention of the audience. I think about one of the newsletters I'm subscribed to. It's a shorts company. It's Bird Dogs, and they are so clever in their email marketing. It's fun. I feel like I know the three guys that are childhood best friends and they started that company together. It takes me behind the scenes. Are they selling me shorts with every single email? And am I buying shorts with every single email? No chance. But I think of them on a weekly basis because I see them in my inbox. So talk to us about some of those maybe less sexy, maybe the web design agencies that are thinking, I just build on WordPress all day. What do those newsletters look like?
Dude, I'm so excited that you mentioned that, because like those kinds of agencies like are exactly who are like the best fit for potions. You're like, I'm confused about how email could be valuable for me. Like, a consultancy or agency is actually exactly who wants to be doing this, because they need to stay top of mind for these customers, right? So doing some kind of thought leadership is like always one option, as long as it's very high value. Rounding up existing news and curating it is another way that potions can help you target your audience. So if you're like a web design agency, for example, like let's say you specialized in, I don't know, home services or something, like potions could help you build a newsletter for that audience. Or let's say like you just wanted to do case studies about like recent clients you had and only send it like maybe once a month. Potions can help you build that newsletter, and that can get your clients excited about like the idea of like making some adjustments on their website, and then keep you top of mind for when they need to do that next transaction. So if you're a contractor, actually it's like, and you're in any kind of transactional business. So if you're like, selling I don't know, like IT pen test or something, where you're testing people's security. Any kind of transactional business like that really benefits from the direct email that reminds the clients, like, hey, like this is the problem I'm solving. Like let's use like web design as another example would be like, hey, like here's a study on like the efficacy or like this boost in conversion rate that this client saw because they adjusted their website, or here's some changes that Google is making that are relevant for like small business owners that like I sell to. And basically like rounding up that news and like having the founder talk directly to the audience cements you as like the leader. And then also like is like you would be like, oh hey, I worked with Brian before on that. Like, yeah, it's good to hear from him. Like, oh, actually I could use like some web design services or something to that effect. And really like Potient's, like the magic of the product is we just figure that out for you.
Yeah, speaking of figuring it out for you, there's something you said earlier, Evan, that I kind of let it slip by, but I want to come back to it because you talked about making things beautiful. And I'll be honest with you that as a consumer, one thing that really stands out to me is when I see email newsletters come through, of course, I get like the plain text ones. I see a fair few of those, but I also then see, I feel like Morning Brew, let's use them as the example, they did kind of up the game with regards to newsletter content and delivery, because for the first time ever, a newsletter in our email inbox was beautiful. And for me, that really stands out because as someone who has had an email list since 2010 probably, I know that it's hard to make it look beautiful. And that also, aesthetically speaking, enhances the brand. It makes me take a brand more seriously if I see that all of that work was done, all of that design work was thought about and it was executed on. Talk to us about that, because anyone can launch an email list on MailChimp, for example, but it's probably going to be ugly. How do you guys address that alongside your clients?
That's really like a lot of what our internal tech is doing. And so we work from your existing brand assets into a template that's custom to your business. And so we don't really we don't even really have a concept of a template in Potions. We call it a blueprint, actually. And basically what it is it's a template that's custom to your business. So Brian, if you were to launch a newsletter with us, for example, our system would figure out like exactly what that should look like and feel like, and then build the banners, the dividers, like the style of that newsletter specific to your business. And that's really like where AI really adds, right? Is that now we can build like bespoke designs for people in a way that's like scalable. And then we'll go ahead and fill out that content for you, say each week, for example. And really just make it look like incredible and like, iterate with your feedback. So.
Yeah, Evan, hearing you say this, I'll be very transparent on the air. I'm just like, why wouldn't I sign up to work with you guys? Like, you guys will figure these things out for us behind the scenes. You're talking about branding. You're talking about content. You're talking about you're talking literally about beginning to finish all the things that we need to ramp up our newsletter. But I would imagine that a lot of listeners are thinking, do I have to have an established business to do this? Do I already have to have an email list that we port over? Or what does it look like to start literally from scratch?
Yeah, from literally zero, like if you're going from 0 to 1, or even if you're thinking about building a business, like creating a newsletter is one of the best possible things that you can do, even if you have no brand associated with it, and it's like almost kind of like a blank-ish email, or like a white email, for example, like with no like design or anything like that. It's like just a personal email. Like building that and then like sending it out to your list like while you're problem hunting is one of the highest leverage things that you can do. So like when I started my business, like for the like several months while I was iterating on the previous product, I just sent a bi-monthly email to the folks in my network that I knew from like my old jobs, friends and family, etc. And when I like needed help finding someone like a hire or co-founder or like a particular customer, or I needed advice on fundraising or similar, like I would just like ask that list and they would get back to me. And that's really like that's the important part about email. And like it's almost like sending a handwritten letter. Like people don't fully expect you to have an amazing email for them. But when you do, it adds a ton of value. Especially if you're going from 0 to 1. Another big thing that you can do if you're going from 0 to 1 is if you're trying to figure out the problem that your audience cares about. So for example, let's say like, oh, I vaguely know that I want to build in the climate space, right? Well, okay, like let me just talk to a bunch of people in climate and then turn those conversations into a newsletter with potions. And then I'll send it out to that audience and I'll be like, hey, I've been like trying to figure out a really valuable problem to solve in the climate space. Let's just turn that search into its own piece of content. Again, using potions or something similar. And then like that will create the momentum that you need, because all those people you meet, like those are relationships that you'll nurture over time and who will eventually help you build that business. So that's like one way to start.
Yeah, Evan, you're getting everybody so excited. I guarantee that a lot of ears perked up as soon as we started talking about $100 a month as your price point and then the start to finish completion. So we're going to drop those links in just a minute. But before we get there, I always love asking this question at the end of every episode, because you're not just a subject matter expert. We're not just talking about email newsletters here today, but you're also one of us. You're also a fellow entrepreneur and founder. And so with that hat on, I want to ask you for your best piece of advice for listeners, knowing that we're being listened to by both Wantrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys, and knowing that they're very excited about taking this channel very seriously after our conversation. What's that one best piece of advice that you want to leave them with today?
Ooh, the best piece of advice for entrepreneurs. And I would say that's so tough. I would say it's like, always just focus on like customer satisfaction. Like, I think like the thing that people miss with a lot of marketing is that like marketing is product, and like in the sense that like the marketing that you send out should feel valuable to the customer. So if you're not solving a problem for the customer with your marketing, you should reconsider that marketing. And like in the newsletter, or like TikToks, or however you decide to like produce content and do marketing, like just be sure that like it has value for that customer. And so many things are like, oh, like 20% off of something you don't care about. Like, don't do that. Try to provide value and solve a problem. That's the biggest piece of advice I'd have for anyone going from 0 to 1.
Yeah, super important. Evan, I will say the name of the game in today's episode was certainly value. We both dropped that word so many times here today, but it's because that's what you do for a living, is you provide value, and it worked its way even into your final piece of advice is don't just send things on our own business's behalf. Send things that people care about and that brings value to their lives and their professional journeys. So with that in mind, I personally know that so many listeners are going to be keen to find you online, take advantage of all the things that you're doing with Potion. So drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
Yeah, you can go and find us at withpotions.com. That's with and then potions plural .com. That simple. Or you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm always posting about this kind of stuff. I'll probably get back on TikTok sometime soon too.
Yes, I love that. Listeners, you already know the drill. We're making it as easy as possible for you to find those links down below in the show notes, no matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode. Although Evan's website is super easy to remember, it's also beautiful. Like, check out Evan's work. It's just so clear to me that everything he does with the utmost effort and intention and strategy to bring value. So definitely go to withpotions.com. You don't have to remember that if you're on the go. Click right on through from the show notes. Otherwise, Evan, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks again, Brian. It's been an absolute pleasure.